Hello and welcome to another interview in the Time for Advice Digital Transformation video series. Over the course of this series, we'll be interviewing industry figures to see what they understand by digital transformation and how they see it impacting financial advice and wealth management businesses. Our guests will include industry pundits and practitioners. All will have their own views, and we hope that you'll find them interesting and informative. As a provider of technology solutions to financial advisors, we have no doubt about the value digital transformation can deliver a business, not only in increased profits, but also in long-term sustainability. Too few people have access to professional advice, simply because the current model is overly expensive due to disconnected systems and multiple manual workarounds, which diverts time away from client relationship management onto mundane tasks like review report writing that clients simply don't value. Now, at Time for Advice, we want to change all of that. It's important to remember that digital transformation is a journey, and all firms will be at different stages in that journey, some well advanced, others just starting. There's no doubt that it's challenging, but we believe firms need to think big, start small, but just start. Digital transformation means different things to different firms. So today I have with me Natasha McKenzie, CEO of Talisman Hub, to discuss what digitisation means for her business. Hi Natasha, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's great to be here.
And it's lovely to see you again. It's been a while.
It has. I think it's been a while in the making, hasn't it?
God, I mean, how many times have we had to bin this because of COVID?
Probably, I think we might be on sort of double digits.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. It's always that thing, isn't it? When you say, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Oh, I can't come.
Yeah.
Hey, hey.
We're here now.
Well done. Well, thank you. And hopefully your journey up from Bristol was okay?
It was great, thank you, yeah.
No problems on the motorway?
Actually, it is very easy just to get around now, isn't it?
Yeah. Nobody's on the... Yeah, exactly. Everyone's at home.
Exactly.
Well, look, Natasha, obviously we're talking about marketing, we're talking about digital,
yeah.
And I know you're very passionate about both of those things, so I'm really looking forward to this chat. But before we kick off, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you come from, your business, Talisman Hub.
My background is actually in advertising, so I was a grad trainee at McKenzie World Group, and then on to McKenzie Saatchi in London, and worked with some amazing brands and some fantastically creative individuals. Sort of developing campaigns and that sort of thing. But yeah, you're right, my passion is very much kind of, I guess, communications and technology. And I've kind of spent the last sort of decade or so marketing technology companies.
Okay.
I guess since we last met, I've set up Talisman Hub, which is a brand communications consultancy, working with sort of, high growth, high performance companies that are sort of scaling at pace. And I tend to work as an outsourced CMO, supporting at a kind of strategic level to sort of set the kind of path and kind of work with teams and kind of really embed myself in the business. And then we operate an outsourced kind of team, so a kind of associate model. We've disrupted the agency world and kind of, got a whole host of professionals that we pull in, depending on what's required to then activate, the strategy and deliver.
Wow.
But yeah, it's about kind of working with the business leaders to really define what they're trying to achieve first and foremost.
Yeah, and how does a firm respond to that, having sort of effectively stranger being parachuted into their business and start telling them what they should be doing? Do you find it's quite smooth in terms of the adoption, or do you find there's a sort of resentment from perhaps the in-house teams, or don't they have an in-house team?
Yeah, no, it's very often the case where you've got a big in-house team. It's kind of a global organisation, and they're going through a transformation program. And more often than not, I think we very rarely come across resistance. Quite often, it's relief.
Yeah.
I think there's somebody here that's going to add some perspective, that's done this before, that's worked with companies and has track record, and we go in. It's a very consultative approach where we're pulling the plaster off and putting the business to pieces to really understand what makes it tick, but looking at it in context of the marketplace. So it's bringing that fresh perspective, which I think people do value.
Fantastic. I think you can certainly see the role, can't you? Because as you say, it gives that sort of helicopter view, somebody who's more, I guess, more neutral, more able to look at the challenge, the issues facing the business and surface those challenges. So confront the issues rather than trying to sort of hide them, which is always the temptation, I suppose. Okay, so we're talking about digital transformation, as I mentioned in the introduction. And of course, it means lots of different things to different people. So from your perspective, what does it mean? What's digital transformation in your book?
Yeah, I guess, as humans, it's our nature to progress, right? So and business is all about change, and so I'll look at this through a brand lens, right? I'm guessing you've got people that have sat in the seat before me that will look at it through a tech lens or others, but from a brand perspective, it's very much about understanding your audience. So I will always put myself in the customer's seat and sort of try and approach, why are you making the change? What is it that you're trying to affect? And ultimately, it's about getting the strategy right. And I think a lot of the work that we do definitely is about really aligning the strategy of the business with the culture and the communications. Those three things have to work together in any kind of transformation program, and really playing to the strengths of the technology. So don't use tech for the sake of tech. I know you and I have sort of talked about this at great length.
Yeah.
Look at what you're trying to achieve with the technology, but it's really about marrying the technology with the talent in the business and ensuring that you're all agreed on direction of travel.
So what you're talking about there is there's sort of a connection between digitisation, financial performance, creating. Is there a connection, would you say, between the digitisation of a business and the financial performance? Because I know you do quite a lot of work with companies that have received private equity investment, for example. So you're sort of asked to come in and sort of drive the business forward. Do you see that, the relationship between the digital maturity of a firm and their financial performance? Yeah,
very much so. I think that's a great point, Roland. I think, if you look at the digitally mature businesses, more often than not, they're really focused on the maximising the performance. So they'll be looking at their operational efficiency. They're going to be looking at, the quality of their product. They're going to be looking at their customer success. They're going to be looking at their talent engagement. And more often than not, they're going to be focused on innovation, right? And through those things, by setting the purpose, getting the right team in place, and really being innovative, but not just for the sake of it, really kind of looking at where you're trying to go and having clear vision, then you can, grow. And ultimately, those are the ones that will succeed.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We're talking a lot about data, obviously, and having data housed in a central truth. So, firms are always saying that, well, increasingly, that data is really the most valuable asset of a business. It's the new currency, isn't it? And most financial advice businesses, if we sort of turn it around to financial advice businesses now, sit on an enormous amount of raw data. But even that, even still, they suffer. Because the data tends to be distributed across multiple different systems to get meaningful insights. And so, leveraging that data remains a challenge. From a marketing perspective, how can financial advice firms sort of turn that around? How can they begin to get more value from data, not only in, perhaps shedding insights on the firm itself, but also leveraging the opportunities that they have with their existing clients and new clients, perhaps, to generate more business as a result? What can they do about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think a lot of businesses are drowning in data, right? There's so much information out there, and it's really about turning that data into knowledge, into insights. And so the focus has to be on the talent in your business as well as the technology. So getting the right talent in the business that can really derive, the insight that is required to then drive business strategy forwards. So it's about marrying those two things together, I think, that really sets you apart. And I actually read a recent report by Bain which said, I think 1% or even less than 1% of data in a business today is actually used to inform strategy.
Really?
Which is insane, isn't it? Yeah. So we are sat on a lot of data. I think what you've got to do is really ask the right questions of that data. And to do that, you really have to understand direction of travel, understand what you're trying to achieve by having all this data. So just collecting the data isn't by nature going to allow you to be a digitally mature business and therefore succeed.
And that's right, isn't it? It's having the end in mind. What are you trying to achieve? And it's true of any business development, I guess. You need to know what the vision is, where you're planning on going, and then work back from there to work out how you're going to achieve that. So if we're looking at firms that want to start this digital transformation journey, there's no doubt in my mind that, if you've got a business which has a single source of truth in modern technology that allows you to leverage that truth, there's got to be benefit. But not only in building sustainable businesses, but also proving and boosting profit, as well as delivering better service, I'm guessing. But there are, and I guess there is a journey that people need to go through. And I think you, in fact, highlighted in one of the communications we had about Deloitte's 7 digital pivots. Now, I'm sure it's out of date because I think we got that email probably about 3 or 4 years ago. But I mean, it sounded fascinating, and I'm sure what was raised there is as relevant today as it was then, because I still think there are loads of firms that haven't even started that journey towards digital maturity. But what are those 7 digital pivot points, and what is the journey that people need to go on in order to get to that goal of digital maturity?
Yeah, I think when analysing the digital maturity index back in 2020, Deloitte identified these sort of 7 pivot points, and they range from improving your infrastructure through to streamlining your customer experience, through to looking at your work streams and streamlining processes and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to bore you with all 7 now.
Oh, go on.
I might not remember them all.
You see, I've thrown you in. There you go.
but yeah, so there are some key kind of areas that of focus, which I guess they kind of mapped and benchmarked and kind of went, okay, well that's going to make a nice report and we can do an infographic around it. But in all seriousness, I think what it comes down to, as we've already identified, is strategy first. Get the strategy right, really understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, and start now. Like, even if you don't have that benchmark, go and do the dip test. Like, start now, do some research, and actually put a stake in the ground and say, this is where we're at, and this is where we're going, and how we're going to achieve that. And also, you have to create a culture of it's okay to fail fast. Be creative, try some stuff out and collaborate. So it's really important that you decide where you're going, but also create this environment where people are happy to make some mistakes. And I think you and I have spoken about this before, about in a corporate environment, things take time, but we now live in this kind of crazy COVID time machine. Everything's changing at a rapid pace, technology's evolving, an alarming rate of knots. So you've got to get with the program, you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to just keep iterating.
Well, I think Microsoft's own view on digital transformation is, digital transformation is hard. Think big, start small, just start.
Yes.
And I think it's those little steps. Absolutely. And you're right, the ability to fail fast, have permission to fail, because it's only through failure that you really learn, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That didn't work, so let's try something new. And it's quite liberating to have that permission, I guess. And the good news is we tend to deal with small entrepreneurial businesses, which is great. And they are all going through a massive change curve, because we're already seeing some new entrants coming into this space, so large corporates providing advice at a very low cost base, and so throwing down the gauntlet to the more technically inefficient firms to do more. And it's interesting, because some recent research, I can't name who did it, it was in one of our trade rags, I think, basically said that only 12% of adults are prepared to pay for financial advice. And so clearly the value proposition, the agreement or argument as to why they should be paying for advice isn't getting through. So how should firms go about changing that perception with their existing clients, and also use their marketing power, if you like, their communication skills to generate more interest, more new business? Because I think at the moment something like 30 million people need financial advice, and only 3 million people get it. So there's a massive advice gap, and again, that's largely due to, I think, the inefficiency of how firms operate. They haven't got the reach, but more importantly, their lack of ability to communicate the value proposition. So how do you go about, this is more about marketing, I guess, how do you go about changing that paradigm? How do you go about starting to build a strategy around engaging with your clients better, and then extending your reach? What are the sort of steps that a firm's got to go through? It's probably the most challenging, but also the most rewarding part of my job, I have to admit. It's not easy creating a value proposition, because you have to be brutally honest with yourself about, first off, what makes you unique, as a business. And quite often I'm going in and pulling the business to pieces, and that's an uncomfortable place to be, I think, as a business owner. You don't want to, like with your house, you don't want to see how it's all built, because you probably wouldn't stay there, you wouldn't sleep very well in your bed. But you do have to kind of pull it apart and look at the
the infrastructure and create that really solid foundation, the platform to build from, and it has to be authentic, it has to be true to you. So do that piece of work first and foremost. And second of all, you then have to look at it in context of your marketplace. So go and do the research, go and do the competitor benchmarking, go and talk to your audience, use it as an opportunity to build advocacy. So go out there and actually engage with your target audience, but also you can talk to prospects, you can talk to partners, you can talk to your team, get a really good 360 view of the landscape. And then the tricky bit is then marrying those two things together to create a value proposition. So quite often we will look at something called an organising idea, and we'll look at your brand archetype, and we'll start to build a whole brand communications framework around your value proposition once you get to that point. But it's really important that you get this solid foundation in place first and foremost, because that then allows you to be authentic but be consistent in your communication, whether you're talking to one type of organisation one day, or an individual the next, or indeed an investor or somebody in terms of attracting talent into the business the next. It's that consistency that's really, really key. And I think with Talisman Hub, I had the privilege to work with some amazing organisations that operate at great scale. I do some hugely impressive things across the globe. But we are now looking at setting up Be Kindred, which is a proposition to the startup world, because it's never too soon to start to really, dig into your value proposition. It's really a valuable, important part of what we all do. Otherwise, it's just a scattergun approach, isn't it? You're just chucking some jelly at a wall and hoping it's going to stick.
And I think you're right. I think if you've got all of those components nailed, where what your mission is, what your target is, then at least you've got the ability to start focusing on that. But then you're still left with the practical reality of how. So how important is technology in supporting that communication strategy, getting to your end client, managing the inquiries and all that sort of stuff? How do you see technology playing its role in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, why if you do something one day, you don't want to do it the same way every single day, right? So put the technology in place. If you've got those systems and processes that are iterative, then get the technology to do the grunt work, because then you've got the talent in your business that want to be heads, not hands, right? They want to be doing the interesting, compelling stuff, and they want to be creating, amazing, kind of content and compelling narrative and talking to the market. So if you can use technology and really plan this out before you bring a system into play, but kind of get the scope right, get the right piece of technology for you as a business right then, and again, don't be scared to sort of try stuff out and for it to fail, but try and automate as much as you possibly can using technology, so that you can then use your time much more efficiently and the talent in your business to best effect, to really drive value and really kind of get that depth of engagement through the content. But what's important when you put that infrastructure in is that you've got some framework to test. When you're putting a piece that comes out into market, if it doesn't have traction, find out why, and put that back into the system, so it's constantly learning, you're continuously improving, and you're working smarter.
I think it's really what it's about, isn't it? And it's having the tools to do that effectively, because I think in common with a lot of firms, there are too many manual processes and people don't question. So where technology, I think, can make a massive difference is, if you do have an outcome, a result that you're trying to achieve, and that product or whatever it might be is consistent, you're doing it all the time, then to get from there to there, is a process that you're going through, often a manual process, which involves a lot of time and effort, is inefficient and gets in the way of really building a scalable business. If you're able to then house all of the critical data into a central data depository, CRM or whatever, then leverage that to not only get the outputs, the communication sorted consistently, but then to automate the journey, thus, as you say, releasing time that would otherwise be spent doing it manually to spend more creative thinking time, testing, challenging the results, then that's the way forward, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such an important point. I mean, even just looking at the CRM, right? There's no point in just having a list of names in a CRM. You've really got to start to segment them, you've got to understand them, you've got to get the intelligence into the system, because only then will it start to work for you. So it's about using the system, you know, to kind of derive the insight, the intelligence from the data.
Yeah.
That's then, you know, and getting the process systems, and sometimes that's about asking the right question, right? And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that, you know, that I've learned definitely around kind of data and kind of marketing information is, you know, sometimes it's, you know, the technology's there, right? Yeah. The technology's way ahead of where we are operating right now. We're not using technology nearly as effectively as we possibly could. So yeah. It's sometimes about, as I said, do the strategy, work out what the question is.
Yeah, it's understanding what you want, isn't it? It's understanding what business information you need, business intelligence you need in order to steer the ship. You know, it's that sort of loop, isn't it, of did that work? Did that work? No, that worked better than that. A/B testing, all that sort of stuff. And I guess with the technology that we've got at our disposal now, especially if it's fully integrated with your client management system, so all of the data is aggregated back against the client for reporting purposes, the ability to see what worked, what didn't work in almost real time is fascinating. So I think for those firms that are looking to begin to look beyond where they are, expand their horizons, engage with their clients better, opening up the opportunity to bring on more clients by you know, targeted marketing, it's essential. It's a critical part. Yeah. And of course, to get all of that insight, that help, there's Talisman Hub.
Yes.
Natasha, thank you very much indeed. It's been really nice talking to you. I found that fascinating, so thank you for that.
Great.
And next time it's going to be
up in the air.
Up in the air.
Yeah, I look forward to that too.
Part 2.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great seeing you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.